oh mate, I don't know how far you're into this book, but like, Jesus, he mentions so much.
It's interesting how many people don't have the time to do things right the first time, but they always have time to do it again down the track.
They will still remember the thing, how you made them feel within that team.
It's important that you sell the purpose of why that metric is important, and important for them and important for the business.
So don't give up after a couple of questions either. It's really important to keep pressing on that.
If you don't care about your people and you don't care about inspiring your people, maybe you should be a team leader, in my opinion. Well, Disrupt Leaders podcast, it is episode 13, unlucky for some, maybe unlucky for Simon Sinek today, because we are doing a book review. Start with why. Jules, how keen are you for today's episode?
I'm keen. We've invested a total of $40-ish between the two of us. I bought the audiobook and the physical copy. So Simon's getting a lot of our paycheck
Hang on a second.
in the last couple of months.
You paid for the audiobook?
Yes.
Bro, it's on Spotify. It's on Spotify for free.
I know.
Can you just turn around so I can see if you've got a handle, being as you're such a mug?
No, the reason I paid for the reason I paid for the audiobook and it's because Spotify gives you 15 hours of, I think, premium listening, and I'd already been a nerd and I'd listened to other books, so I had to buy this.
Fair enough.
You know?
Fair enough. Bro, premium listens. This is confirmed. Julian Lawrence, premium listens. Anyway, a bit of an agenda statement, if you will. First things first, we're going to review the book, go through start with why, whether or not should you buy it. Should you buy start with why? That's what we're going to talk about. And then second of all, we're going to go into like the practical applications, the thing that you can take from this book and move and do as a frontline leader, because it is very focused on business owners, don't you think, Jules? Like, it is definitely directed at people who are owning a small to medium business more so than the kind of leaders that you and I are.
Yeah, 100%. I think, again, going back to our roots and why we decided to start this podcast, it was to take information like this and concentrate it for what it means for frontline leaders. And yeah, it definitely, this is based on if you're starting your own business or you have a business, and around how, I guess, the external, your clients and stuff perceive your business, and how starting with why can really help your perception overall, I think, is the main point of the book. There is things that frontline leaders can take off, but there might be some, there's definitely some controversy that we would like to stir the pot with from a disrupt leader's perspective.
Now, I'm going to say this, right? And I'm going to preface everything I'm about to say about this book. So should you buy, start with why? In my opinion, no, you shouldn't. Save your money. And that's a real big call to make, because Simon Sinek is the GOAT. When it comes to leadership, he is the absolute greatest of all time. Every video I've ever seen of that man talking about leadership is phenomenal. Every podcast he's on, everything he does, his TED Talk, excellent. And to be honest, I don't disagree with any of the things written in this book. I don't know about you, Jules. I think everything in there all makes sense. It's all great. But the book is not good. Like, the book itself is very repetitive. And I feel like you could condense everything. If you watch his TED Talk, you've seen everything in this book. There's nothing in this book. It's just him making the same points over and over again. And to kind of get into my review, I felt like the first chapter is like, this is why you should start with why. This is a business that didn't. This is a business that did, and it worked. Also, Apple did it really well. And then that's important, by the way, listeners. Then chapter 2 comes along and it's, you should start with why. Here's a business that didn't do it. Here's one that did do it. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, this again. And then here's Apple again. Okay. And then chapter 3 rolls around and it's the same thing again. Oh, and here's Apple. And it just, I don't know how you felt, Jules, but I was just like, I get it. I get that I should start with why. Can we start getting into the practical steps of how to start with why? What are your thoughts, my friend?
Yeah. You went with the, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and keep fixing it for 241 pages mantra, young Simon Sinek. And as Bill said, listen, we definitely appreciate the messaging that's in this book.
100%.
In this book. And I think for Bill and I as well, we come from a perspective that I think a lot of the things that are spoken in this book, we probably banged on for the last 12 episodes or so. And even before reading this book, we probably had a lot of these beliefs internally anyway. And if you're probably listening to our podcast, I would garner to think that you probably have some of these beliefs already. So this is probably not going to change your mind, I don't think. It's not going to be like, oh, this is completely upended how I look at leadership. What it's probably going to do, it's probably going to really maybe add strength to some of those beliefs you already had around how you treat your employees, how give them a sense of motivation and help them perform over the long term. But it's not groundbreaking in any ways. And as Bill said, 100%, geez, God Almighty, he mentions Apple so many times. I've ruined this book for Bill, I think.
You did.
Very
Did.
early on. Spoiler alert, I was like, Bill, I finished the book way before Bill did.
I think I'd read one
I
chapter at
made
this
the
point.
mistake. Yeah, I made the mistake. I was like, I feel like if he mentions another business, he would die.
Bro,
So,
I'm literally, it got to the point that like, I went 2 whole pages without reading the words Apple or Steve Jobs. I was like, I need to check on Simon. Is he all right? Because I feel like
yeah,
maybe he'd have an aneurysm. And look, don't get me wrong. I understand why he uses Apple. They are a very good example of why, starting with your why, focusing on your why, believing in your why, and all of the examples in this book. Are you telling me they're the only business that's doing it that's that high profile? I just don't believe it. And I just think it got to the point where you mention Apple so much, I start to tune out when Apple gets mentioned because I'm like, get it. Like the iPhone's great. Let's move on. Let's get to the next thing. Yeah, big criticism. And thanks, Jules, for reading the book for me.
Yeah, I mean, my pleasure. I feel you would have got there in the end, knowing you, Bill. If you did complain about the end, I would have been very surprised, even without me, poking you in that direction.
Oh, dude, it's one of those things. As soon as you mentioned it, I don't know if you've seen that episode of How I Met Your Mother where they like say things about each other and then the glass shatters. It was exactly that. You said it and then the glass shattered, and then I'm literally reading and I'm like, oh, geez, this is a lot. 5 pages later, I'm like, okay, Simon. Okay. I think to go into it, and I think you touched on a really good point. The messaging is fantastic. And I think, like you said, if you've been listening to our podcast for a while, everything that we talk about, a lot of that sort of stuff stems from this. We very much believe in focusing on your purpose, having a vision, working towards your vision, communicating your vision to your people, explaining why they should be doing things. We definitely live and breathe these values. But I just don't think I could recommend the book to someone. I wouldn't recommend the book to someone. If someone came to me and they were like, hey, Bill, I was looking for a book on leadership, or I'm looking at improving as a leader, I'd probably still refer them to Simon Sinek, 100%. I'd probably put them in his direction as a place to start. I just don't think this would be the place that I would start. I would probably be like, check out this video. I think he did a podcast with our best friend, Stephen Butler, the one-time commenter on the podcast. Like, he's basically BFS with us now. But he did a podcast with him recently, and I don't know if you've listened to that one, but it was very good. Very good. Yeah. And a lot of his messaging is good. So I think you could listen to that, skip this, and then save yourself $20. Sorry, Simon, for costing you $20.
Yeah, there's definitely some short form videos and generally TED Talks and stuff that are probably a better investment in your time if you want to probably get more inspired and also get a better idea of how to approach some of those things. Like, he does a really good one on values that is very similar to something which I spoke about a while back and probably touch on today as well. So that probably brings us to, what did we get from this book? As much as we say we probably didn't enjoy the formatting of the book and in the repetitiveness of it, we do agree with the messaging in there. And there are definitely things that are worth mentioning in this book. As I said before, they're not groundbreaking to Bill and I because they're already things that we practice. But I think it's important for you guys as leaders to still pay attention to some of the things he says in there. And it might be just worthwhile as a refresher of the things to do, because life gets stale as a leader sometimes. If you've been we usually preach this stuff to new leaders and maybe you've taken on a new team. But in a lot of cases, you're probably quite tenured. And we've just discussed in the last episode with tenured employees, they probably need a refresher more than anyone else because you've been left alone for your own devices for a long time. And so this might be some of the points we're going to discuss now might be a refresher you need to go, oh yeah, geez, I've got to revisit some of that stuff I used to do when I was a new leader or a few months back and bring that to life.
Yeah. I will say this for the book's credit, right? I don't know. As much as I don't recommend it, I do think personally, whenever I read a book like this, if you can take a couple of things from it, if there are a couple key takeaways things you didn't have before, even if it's 1 or 2, it's not necessarily time wasted. So I don't regret my time spending with this book. And I feel like I do want to make that clear. So Jules, we'll get stuck into it. So what were your positives from this book? We've spoken a fair bit at length about our negatives. What did you like about it?
Yeah, I think there's lots of examples, obviously, apart from Apple. He uses the Wright brothers, Martin Luther King, and I think the other example was the Japanese car one, which I know you got a lot out of as well.
Yeah, I love that one.
So I'll probably start there because it's one of the first things he mentions. And the idea behind that is fit by design, not by default, is the wording he uses there. Yeah. Essentially, the story is that American car companies, they started to struggle with their sales and that kind of stuff. So they went to Japan and wanted to get an idea of what Japanese companies are doing and what are they doing so well. And in America, what they usually do is once a car kind of rolls off the production line, they get someone to go around with a mallet, apparently, and tap all the kind of little seams in and parts of the car in so that it all fits nicely for the showroom. But in Japan, they didn't have a mallet guy because they designed it from the start so that everything fits perfectly so they don't have to have someone tap it in the start. And the whole point of that is if you start your team off in the right direction from the very beginning, you design it so that everything fits perfectly. You don't have to worry about little band-aid solutions, because a lot of times in businesses, you get a lot of band-aid solutions, don't we? Like where we're just on that little hamster wheel running to nowhere. And we go, oh, here's a problem. Oh shit, there's 600 problems though. Let's just put a band-aid over this. Forget that it exists. Eventually it'll pop up again, but it'll be someone else's problem then. Whereas if you design it from the start, you start to think about things that might go wrong, start to plan for those things as much as possible. You're going to be better for it. You're going to have a more efficient team. You're going to not waste money and time on mallet solutions, and you're going to have solutions already designed for, if that makes sense. What do you feel about that, Bill?
I definitely think that it is a thing in business. You see it a lot of the time where they really plan, like they release things knowing they're not done, they're knowing they're not ready, and then they're like, oh, we'll just fix it later. And I just think you're always better off just prepared to do it correctly. And there's one quote in the book that I particularly loved, and I've actually used it at work a few times already. And it's interesting how many people don't have the time to do things right the first time, but they always have time to do it again down the track. And it's something that's really stood out to me. And that's one thing that I found pretty groundbreaking. And just as a leader, like sometimes, like we've spoken about before, certain things are quite boring. Like there are certain tasks that are a bit boring or dull and you don't want to get it done, or you maybe sometimes think you'll cut a corner here or there or whatever. And I think, it's one of those things. Every time you do, you end up having to create that work a little bit further down the track. And so it's something from the book that I've taken away with my own life, like personal and professional. It's always better just to put the time in and do it right first time. If you can get it done in 20 minutes or you can get it done in 30 minutes, it's going to be perfect. I'm never going to have to look at it again. Spend the 30 minutes, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I think also same with your people. I think it's a good lesson for your people. Bill always goes on with the slow is smooth is fast is Bill's phrase that he uses consistently. And this is definitely a great story around that kind of stuff. If you take time at the start, recently in our line of work, we were talking about a focus on quality and wanting to shifting that focus to efficiency. And the point Bill and I were both trying to make was quality is efficiency. If you take care of quality at the very start, yes, it's going to be time consuming at the very beginning, but eventually you have to think that a part of quality is efficiency. You can't have a quality product without having an efficient product. Think about the world that we live in right now. In a lot of ways, the world we live in right now, efficiency equals quality, right? If you can't have, say you order Uber Eats or something, right? Quality of food was great, but it came 3 hours late. So still good quality, though. Quality was great. But part of that quality is affected by how efficiently you get that thing as well.
I mean, think about you're giving it a star rating, right? If you're giving if you got a rate something 5 stars, right? It could be perfect, but if it took an hour to come, you're still going to mark it down, right? Whereas if it came really quickly and sucked, you're going to mark it down. But if it came medium and was pretty good, And I think, again, you hit the nail on the head, though. I always say slow is smooth is fast. And I say it so much. I say it at work all the time. I say it to my team all the time. I say it to everybody all the time. But it is true. In the long run, and especially when you're working with your people and you're looking at developing people, if they've got 5 or 6 things that are all going wrong, just pick one, focus on one, fix it, move on to the next one. If you do one thing a month for 5 months, in 5 months' time, they'll be done. But if at the start of month 1, you try to do all 5 at once and try to rush it, I guarantee come month 5, there'll still be gaps everywhere in that consultant. And it scales to much larger things as well. Like when you're trying to roll out whole projects as a team, when you're trying to get the whole team in one direction, you're always better off just taking your time and sticking the landing.
I think as a business, and this is another point I was making recently, is that as a business, if you tell people to fix something, they will fix it, right? Like you tell your people, hey, let's be more efficient, or hey, can you find a fix for this? They will fix it. How it gets fixed, that's another story. And that's where I think like quality is really important. Like you need to make sure your fixes are solving the problem long term. And at the very minimum, at least the shortish long term, if that makes sense in any way. But like it can't be just, okay, it's fixed for now and it's going to become a bigger problem later. I think that's going to cost you more in the long run as well.
The other piece of that is you need to make sure it's solving the problem. Like you touched on it right there. Not solving the symptom of the problem, solving the problem. What's the actual issue? What's the drama? That's what we need to solve for. And I think we can tend to get lost a little bit in that one. I think a really good example of that is when you're working with a consultant and your people are, I need to get their AHT down. And so we're just focusing on the AHT. The AHT being high is a symptom. Are they asking the right questions? How are they delivering solutions when they do deliver solutions? What else are they doing like in the interaction? If you focus on that's the actual problem that's causing the symptom, which is high AHT. And that again also scales to like business projects. Like like I've given a micro example, but it definitely scales.
Correct. And but we are speaking to more frontline leaders, right? Correct. And I think the book deals with more macro problems, and then we probably deal with more micro problems. So it's good to go micro.
Well, I guess the first hot tip for the frontline leaders, how to live that value, start with why. I would say, obviously, one, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. If you've gotten 13 episodes into Disrupt Leaders podcast and haven't said that out loud yet, I don't know, I'm doing something wrong, right? But I think the second piece of this is, when you are with your people, make sure that you do focus on the actual problem. Really look at the root of what's going on. So what are you trying to achieve? And then, okay, what's actually going to be driving what achieves that? And I think the example I gave with AHT kind of fits that pretty well. It tends to be the thing that in contact centers we talk about the most. But it could be, like if you work in a contact center, it could be adherence, right? The symptom could be that adherence is really bad, but what's the cause for their adherence really bad? Is it that they're not doing enough call control? They're not getting off the calls quickly enough? Is it that they're just taking too many breaks? So you need to find the actual problem and then solve for the actual problem. And that just requires to be a bit more investigative. You basically got to pretend to be Batman, office place Batman. Unfortunately, you don't get to wear a mask, but we move.
Just go to the heart of the problem, asking those questions. We've run through those questions before in previous episodes. Go back to one of the coaching episode that we had. Now I'm trying to remember which episode that was, but I'll put it in the links.
What I'm saying is, if you have a problem and you need to solve the problem, don't look at the solution. Instead, start with why there's a problem. There we go. There it is. Wow. There it is. There it is.
The Simon Sinek plug. Great. He's going to be proud.
We spent the first 10 minutes trashing his book, so maybe not too proud.
Yeah.
But no, I think that is for me, that's the first thing around starting with why. Obviously, the context of this was knowing your purpose. That was the why. But for me, I think that's look, it was a bit of a dad joke. I'm not even the one that has kids.
Great.
And I think I did this last time as well. I think we're 2 episodes in a row. I'm the one that's making a dad joke here. I don't
dad jokes. Yeah, correct. Yeah, I'm curtailing the dad jokes, but I do have them in the canister in office. They come out.
I'm sure.
Cool.
In other situations, definitely they do. Not right now or on demand, but
right now. I don't want to upstage you in your crafted jokes. Cool. The other one is practice the ability to inspire. I think that's a really good one for me as well, because again, it gets really stale sometimes, leadership, and boring, and can get monotonous and routine. You need to make sure that you're keeping it interesting for yourself as much as your people, but also shadow. I think we've made this point before. Shadow other people in the business. If getting a mentor who's maybe gone down that beaten path before is really good as well, because you can really get an understanding of different ideas. Maybe you'll read books, podcasts, Disrupt Leaders podcast, maybe, to get ideas of how you can just be, inspiring all the time. Because you 100%, you've seen leaders that have been in that position for so long, and now they're just part of the furniture. They don't really make an impression on their people anymore. And that's probably the worst thing you can start to become as a leader. Because as a leader, one of the biggest things, Simon actually has inspired me, and one of the sayings that I hold true to myself is I want to inspire people to do things that inspire them. I think he said, I don't really say this in this book, but he said it in his kind of TED Talks as well, multiple times. And that's definitely the person I want to be as well. Like we've said before, we want to be a kind of career progression factory. And that's because we want to find something that inspires our people. There's nothing wrong with frontline roles, but eventually it gets a bit tiring. Eventually it's going to get the better of you. And I'd rather you get into something that's you're going to really enjoy long term. And that's always been my viewpoint. To do that, I need to be inspiring and find ways to inspire my people all the time. I need to practice my ability as well.
It is, again, another Bill catchphrase, the champagne of victory. Like seeing your people have that moment where they're generally like really excited, really passionate for that next thing. I think I've spoken about this to you like off camera, Jules, but I had an employee recently. She's one of the more tenured ones, been experienced for ages. And in our first conversation, she mentioned that she felt like her career wasn't really going anywhere, that she'd had a few conversations, she had a few ideas, but it hadn't really progressed. Nothing had happened. And literally by the end of the session, I'd sent an email, got some stuff organized. And then already she's now been along to a couple of meetings with the team she was interested in going into. And just her like energy and reaction when she came to me after the meeting, telling me how much she loved it, how much she got from it, how she was so excited and this and that, like literally rejuvenated me. Like I felt so excited and energetic just like by association of that. And I think the idea that there are leaders out there not putting that time in to do those things to inspire the people is funny, because it's like it's actually you as the leader that's also hurting from this. It's not just your people. Like you're also costing yourself that experience of watching someone that you care about achieve their dreams. And Make no mistake about it. As a team leader, you should care about your people. If you don't care about your people and you don't care about inspiring your people, maybe you shouldn't be a team leader, in my opinion.
Yeah, because like you can get jaded really quickly, right? Like we had the conversation a couple of episodes ago around like a leader that's told me they don't believe in developing their people because like they don't want to lose all their people or whatever. And that is a definition of a person that's quite got jaded and probably hasn't practiced the ability to inspire their people. Like they're probably just going through the motions and they're now lost belief in the fact that they can inspire their people to do something better than they're currently doing. And as Bill says, it's like the champagne of victory, right? Like it is what leadership is about. You take that away, I would hate being leader. Forget for like everything else is not as fun. Like, why the hell would you do that for? Like it's such a no satisfaction with the rest of the role. That's what gives me satisfaction.
Like coaching people, developing people is why I come to work. I do have a question for you because obviously we mentioned that this would be an informative session. I just talking about what you like from the book. What are some of the things, what are some examples you give of how you inspire people? What are some things that you currently do with your team? Because I know you do a fantastic job of this.
Yeah, so obviously the first thing is, like I've spoken about this before, is set up values for the team. I'm a big believer in setting up individual values for your team. Now, your company has values. I am sure of it. They probably have something written on a wall somewhere or in some
integrity,
guarantee
integrity is on there.
Integrity, accountability, all those lovely buzzwords that mean nothing to no one. It means nothing to anyone, none of those words. And I can guarantee you most of your employees probably don't know the values of your company. For better or for worse, if you live in a decently large organization, they probably don't know them and they probably don't really believe in them individually. So it's really good to pick values for get your people to pick values that they want to be representative of the team. And the tip I'll give you, this is straight from Simon Sinek, not in this book, but him saying this verbally as well, is that you want to make it like verbs. So instead of honesty, it is in the book, is it? Yeah, cool. Okay, yeah. So instead of saying honesty, you want to say things like, I want to tell the truth.
Yeah, right? I love it.
So it's an actionable value statement. And telling the truth isn't subjective. Being honest is subjective. People might say, listen, I choose not to tell the truth there, so I've technically haven't lied. I'm being honest. But if you say, you as a team, we're going to tell the truth, means you're going to be honest no matter what. And so things like that. My team chose things like they want to have team camaraderie. They want to show actively when coming to office, everyone wants to talk to one another and actively support each other's ideas. Was one of the values that they came up with. So that inspires them, right? Like when they know everyone's playing off the same hymn sheet, that we all believe in these values, we're all working towards the same goals, that inspires them. And inspires me as a leader as well. Because what happens now is that I put up posts. Every time someone lives those values, I get a kick out of it. I'm like, oh man, that's great to see. Like everyone's engaged with it and they're sharing, oh, Jules, look at this. This is how I've lived progression. You know what I mean? One of our values. And they send me a chat where they've done slightly better than they did last week. And I share that on the page. It goes, hey, XYZ has lived progression this week by doing this. That's one of the things I do to inspire my people consistently as well. The other one, the biggest carrot of all that I ever use is the development conversation. I have career conversations consistently all the time. It's pretty much, I would say 80% of my one-on-ones will allude to that either a little bit or a lot, depending on where they are in their journey. And it's definitely a massive thing to inspire everyone because I get a massive kick. The biggest kick of all, if I see someone go from the role they're in currently to a role that they love, and that's what I want to see going forward for everyone in my team. What about you, Bill?
Yeah, I think the second point is probably one of the main ones that I definitely live true to. I think career progression, and I've mentioned this a ton of times before, so I'm not too into it, but I think a lot of frontline roles feel like Sisyphus pushing that boulder up the hill. And I think they push the boulder up the hill, they get their KPIs, they hit their results today, and then tomorrow they come into it, the boulder's back at the bottom of the hill, they've got to push up the hill again. And I think if there's no end to that, if there's no point when they're not going to have to keep doing that, what's the point? It just becomes monotonous. And Sisyphus obviously found joy in the work, but I don't feel consultants tend to. I don't feel like the frontline employees do not tend to. Over time, eventually it starts to go the other way, I think. And so I think the career progression carrot is definitely by far the biggest one. Something else, I don't actually know if it falls under inspire my people, but I definitely think it's something that I hold true to, and it definitely makes my people want to perform well for me. It's just letting them know that I'm there for them no matter what, and I'll always back them, and I'll always be there to support them. I've had a few interesting conversations literally today. I've got some very tenured consultants who are very good at their role, but they're very like self-conscious about how they do things and get in their own head a little bit. And like just small things, like letting them know that like at any time, if they need something, drop of a hat, they can send it to me and I'll come and have a look at it and I'll come and try and support them through it. And just to remove that fear, remove that insecurity, remove that doubt so that they can feel encouraged to fail is the other thing. I think that's a big tool around inspiring people, is letting people know that they can shoot for the stars and they don't have to worry about the repercussions, and knowing that if they want me to look at something after they've done it, and then if they have done it wrong, then we'll sit down, catch up and discuss what could they have done differently, what's the opportunities. And I literally said to one of my employees today, I feel like a lot of people say that. I think a lot of people say, oh, it's okay to try things and fail, but there's a very big difference between saying it and doing it and living it, and your people genuinely coming to you with something and being like, hey, Bill, I've made a mistake, or hey, Jules, I've made a mistake. And then you actually just being like, okay, where did it go wrong? Or what can we do differently next time? What's our takeaway from this? It's very refreshing for someone when they haven't had that before. And I also think it's very inspiring. What are your thoughts?
Matt, you've segued into a point, or I think I've got a point from Mr. Sinek himself that will add proof to that pudding. One of the points he makes is that as a leader, your job is not to come up with ideas, but create a space for ideas for your employees to come up with ideas. And the example he uses there around creating a safe space is that circus performer's net. He talks about when you're a circus performer and what do you call the guys who kind of tightrope walkers? And they're walking through, they've got a safety net when they're practicing. But in the real show, there's no safety net, right? So as a leader, one-on-ones, in your huddles, you are the safety net, right? You're there to pick them up when they fall, so that when they go out there and they're live with their clients, or they're in a situation where you're not there, they've done it enough times with the safety net that they're going to be absolute legends when the safety net is not on. And so it's about 100%. Don't just say, hey, it's okay. It's okay if you fall. Like also with the things that you give them, you give them a goal or commitment or action to do when they're with their client. When they don't quite pull it off, it's about going, hey, the worst that can happen is you fall on your face, but I'm here to pick you up. You know, like the worst that can happen is the client says no, or you just have a bad chat or experience. That's one bad experience out of the 50. That's it. Out of the 500 you'll have in a week. So don't worry about it. You know what I mean? All I want to see as a leader is you try. As long as I see you try, everything else I can help you with.
And I think that's it. Like, as long as I see that effort is what I care about, and I think it's something that's really underrated. I definitely don't shoot for perfection. I think the worst thing you can do as a team leader is to like over scrutinize things and over stress things and put that pressure on your people, especially when it comes to things that like form part of the KPIs. You know what I mean? Obviously, with KPI, you've got to hit your KPI, but I think there's always definitely things within that they can do. You can be a little bit softer and a little bit more relaxed as long as they hit the overall numbers, if that kind of makes sense. I think sometimes they just get a little bit lost looking for trees in the forest when it comes to that sort of stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can. The thing with also is that eventually people are just going to get burnt out. As I said before, if you give them a metric and you tell them to go hit that metric, more than likely, unless it's an absolutely unrealistic metric, they will hit it, right? Can they sustain it, right? Like
that's the key thing.
A day doesn't make a champion a week, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
This is a really nice segue, I think, into how to start with why as a leader. And I think it comes down to that conversation. If you've got a metric that you need your consultant to hit, it's important that you sell the purpose of why that metric is important, and important for them and important for the business and important for you and your team as a whole. We'll give, like AHT is always a really good example, I think. Again, it's the most common one. But if you've got someone who traditionally is a little bit higher in AHT, just go, hey man, I need you to lock in on your AHT for the next week. They'll go, yeah, sure, bet. I know, lock in on that AHT for a week. But much like Jules says, what's the chance of that being sustained? Whereas if you sit down and you have that conversation around the real values of why they need to hit that AHT, hey, so I could see AHT is a little high, and then you've had that discovery conversation around why, whatever, but so what is achieving this going to do for you? Okay, so for you, by achieving your AHT, you'll be passing all of your KPIs, which means that role that you were talking about, that you're looking at going, you'll be able to go to that interview and be like, yeah, I'm passing all my KPIs. It also means that my boss will tell everybody else that you're doing a really good job and passing your KPIs. That's one part of it, but then also how it benefits their team. But obviously also if you're hitting your AHT, it means that this will happen, there'll be other less concerns in other places. And it's by communicating that purpose, that vision of what it's going to do for the person. And that's what's going to make them continue to keep their AHT down after a week or 2 weeks' time. because it's something that they're consciously worried about and concerned about, rather than just getting another telling off from you.
Yeah. And I think if you try to get them to give you those answers is my tip around that, right? As 100% link it back to their, correct. Yeah. Link it back to their overarching goal is what I used to say back in the coaching days. And then, but what I would say is that ask them that question. So once you come up with a commitment, or you go, okay, yep, but what are you struggling at the moment? Oh, I'm struggling with my ADHD. Okay, fantastic. What would it mean for you if you were hitting your ADHD target? Yes. And they go, oh, okay, like I'm on target. I keep pressing that, because some of them will go, oh, what would it mean for you if you hit ADHD target? I'll be on target. Okay, so what? You're on target. What does that mean? It means nothing to me. It means nothing to you. I'm sure the company you work for is happy, but what does that mean for you? You know what I mean? And then you keep asking that question. They go, eventually they go, oh, if I'm on target for long enough, I'll get a good brand in the company, or I get recognized, or whatever the case is, right? Like you eventually get to the point of what it actually means for them. So don't give up after a couple of questions either. It's really important to keep pressing on that button. And it comes to the point of people don't remember, what you do. People remember why you do things, right? And it's again, going back to that why, is giving them the why, is giving them a reason to keep performing at a high level as well.
Yeah, correct.
It's really, really
Because
key.
otherwise, ultimately, I think you can't touch it. They don't care long term. Probably they don't care, and I'm not going to say all consultants don't care, but you hit it in the head. But if you ask them, what's your HCD for you? And their first thing is, I'll pass my target. That's what their current thoughts are. They're not thinking deeper about it. It might be somewhere under the surface, but like their main thoughts when it comes to being at their role is just, oh, okay, I'll get a pat on the head. And so by probing deeper and asking us questions and forcing that realization, that is how you change behavior. Start with why.
Yeah, correct. Nobody comes to work just to do a menial job.
Correct, dude. Hit that why.
Which brings down to a couple of points here that Simon mentions, which is companies don't know why their customers are their customers and why their employees are their employees, which is very closely connected to another point where they make is mud rolls downhill. So how companies treat their employees is how they treat their clients or their customers. I think these 2 points are very interrelated for me in my head. I don't know what you think, Bill.
Yeah.
And going back to the quality and the metrics, right? This is the other silly thing I always see leaders talk about. And they always talk about this random crap, right? They'll be like, oh, let's just focus on this metric for whatever reason. Or no, or they think their job as a leader is to focus on metrics. Your job as a leader is not to focus on metrics, mate. Your job as a leader is to focus on your people, focus on the metrics in a lot of ways, with the clients, right? If you look after your people, they look after clients. And that's always been the case, right? So there's no point looking at all those different things, going into the weeds of all those things if they don't serve any purpose for your people. I think let that be your value statement as a leader, if that makes any sense.
And I think that's how you should determine your time, your effort, your energy. Like when it comes to you doing a task, like if you're doing something and you're like, okay, this is going to take 4 hours of my day. Are my people getting 4 hours worth of time out of that? Or is it something that they're going to look at for 10 seconds and go, yeah, cool, move on. So what can I be doing to benefit my people the best, support my people the best, give them the most of me that's going to get them to help them be the best? And I think you really nailed it, to be honest, man. Like I think if you focus on results, you might hit them. But I think if you focus on your people, they will get you the results because they want to for themselves and they want to for you as a leader.
Yeah. And I think, how do we live that as people? Like some of the things we've spoken about already is that, but like investing time in your people, like really proof is in the pudding, right? Like we've said this before, and Simon mentions it in his book as well. Like your actions are proof of your why. So as a leader, do those things that make people feel good. You know what I mean? If it's career progression that they're wanting, Bill and I spoke about this before, go out and make those connections for them, help them network and do them quickly. And this shouldn't be 6 months from now. Start doing them now, straight away. You've taken over a team that probably the first 6 weeks should be first impression week for you, right?
It's like, the honeymoon period,
Yeah, correct. If you can make or break your leadership within those first 6 weeks, if you can do actionable things, it doesn't even have to be groundbreaking things, right? Bill and I we've taken over a team in the last 8 weeks or so, and we haven't done groundbreaking things, but we've created great impressions with our people because we've done things. We've done things for them. That might be getting some leave approved that they've been trying to get approved for a while. Or it might be a working arrangement. It might be a career progression conversation. And for me, and I know you, Bill, you think the same way as well. For me, these aren't things that have taken a massive amount of time, like, I don't know, like, or energy, like, or brain space, to be honest with you. But they find it so fulfilling when you do it and you get back to them, and their impression of you and what they will do for you afterwards is no end.
Yeah. I literally spoke about it earlier in this episode, that the person that I sorted out the meeting, shadowing, I've had her in a one-on-one with someone who like runs the space. She's interested in going in. 2 emails, maybe not even 2 emails. I think it was an email and a Slack message. That's all it's cost me. And yet she thinks I'm God's gift to team leading. And that's literally all that it's taken. It's not about putting in crazy amounts of effort. It's just about committing to the small things, doing the small things consistently. And I think that's the piece that, like, I think a lot of leaders, you said it before, they get lost in the weeds trying to do these like big sweeping actions. They're going to solve everyone's problems and sort their lives out. Just be consistent, do the small things, action things as soon as you get them, be efficient. That's it. It's not rocket science, I don't think.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to do a Simon Sinek trick and be repetitive here, Bill. And get
really good at starting with why, just so you know, guys.
Yeah.
If you didn't know, Apple.
Fantastic. Have you had
Hey,
the new
Apple, can you sponsor
AirPods?
me?
Yeah, the new AirPods Max, $900 well spent, apparently. The other thing about doing stuff for your people, making them feel good about you as a leader, is that, again, I'm going to this fact again, is that people remember how you made them feel, not what you did. And Simon mentioned that, he goes, achievement is a tangible measure, whereas success is a feeling. Right. If you make people feel successful, people feel good about you as a leader, they will remember that. They will go on to other businesses maybe, or other parts of the business, and they will still remember how you made them feel within that team. You know what I mean? Like, I recently had a person move from my team just because, like, relocation stuff, and they were like, "Oh, Jules, I really love," like, I took them out of my team Slack, because that's what I do. Bill and I do that. We kick people out of our Slack once they're no longer in our team. So I don't want to freaking bloated Slack, right? So
I
just
people in there reading my secrets.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. What is this? Anyway, and she was like, "Oh, Jules, I was going to go back and look at some of the things you sent me on our team Slack, and I wanted to copy that to use in some of the conversations." And I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'll send them to you." She was like, "Can I still be in your Slack?" And I was like, "No." I said, "If you have any questions, though, you can, like, reach out to me, and I'm always happy to have the conversation with you, because I'm just because I'm not your leader anymore, doesn't have those conversations." But, like,
no, they're dead to me. I don't want to talk
personally,
to
for me, that just told me that. Sorry,
I was like, "No, they're dead to me. You gone out of sight,
no,
out of mind."
you're dead to me.
Not in my
Don't even
Slack.
talk to me.
Don't bother me.
Yeah,
Sorry, you were saying. Yeah, it tells you what.
No, but it tells me that obviously I've been doing something right over the last 8 weeks or so, that in the short amount of space of time, she was really inspired within the team, and she felt really included, and she wanted more of that. And that's what you want. At the end of the day, that's a big tick. As a leader, keep doing more.
I had a really interesting interaction today. I had a one-on-one today, and it was with one of my consultants I had spoke to last week. And I think I mentioned previously, very experienced tenured consultants haven't had a lot of coaching because they're so good. And in my first real one-on-one with every single person, what I did is we sat down and we marked an interaction together. So if it was via call, we listened to the call. If it was via live chat, we read the live chat. We went through what they did well, what they didn't do well. We really focused on those kind of bits and pieces. And for this particular person, it was a really good chat. Everything was what they did well. I think there was maybe one minor thing they hadn't done well. And then we sat down and we literally filled the form out to, like, mark it, whatever. But then today, we're in our one-on-one, and she was like, "Oh, I've never had that before. I've never, ever in my entire life sat down and marked interaction with a leader." And she's like, it was a little intimidating at first. And she's like, "I couldn't tell." I sat there being like, I don't know if Bill was like a really good team leader, or if he's just like a really scary, intimidating person and he's trying to intimidate me. I definitely wasn't trying to intimidate you, so I'm going to take it you think I'm a good team leader. But it was just, it was so funny, because to me, it is so surprising that, like, all we did was read a chat together. Like she said, that her previous examples have been a lot of, the team was, "I've noticed you do this on chats, how can we do it differently?" And it was all speculative. There was no actual ever example presented. And all I've done is literally go, "Let's have a look at this. Oh, you've done this here. What can we do differently? Or what did you do well here?" And to me, that is so simple, such an easy thing to do. But again, it was an action, and for people, groundbreaking, right? I've done something that's simple, but for them, really had an impact and been meaningful.
Yeah. The other point I want to segue into from there is talking about kind of collaboration with other people, right? So you've got your team. We just spoke about how once they leave our team, they're dead to us, well, in a funny way. But in the reality is you need other people as leaders to be successful as well. And I've seen a lot of leaders, like we have examples we've come across, Bill, where they're lone wolves and they just do their own thing. But I think when they need to achieve a lot of change really quickly, they struggle because nobody else believes in them or wants to work with them. And one of the sayings that Simon has is, when you compete against everyone else, no one wants to help you. When you compete against yourself, everyone tries to help you. And it's just that the comparison is the thief of joy situation, right? So sometimes you got to, even with your people as well, I think comparing person to person is really unfair at times. Like you do it naturally as a part of being as a team. We put up your team stats every week and everyone can see each other, but not everyone's in the same situation as well. And you've got to understand that people have different starting capabilities when you come to your team. And also, don't compare yourself to other leaders as well. Like sometimes what they outwardly show in huddles and stuff like that is not actually what they're like probably when they're with their people. And that it's funny because now having gotten people from other teams, I can tell you for sure there's a lot of advertising going on, but there's not much of actual production happening. You know what I mean? Like I feel. And so sometimes the leader, you go, oh, these people all have it together. Like they're like just superhuman leaders and they're getting everything done all the time. I think it's important to not look at that and look at inwardly and go, okay, what am I capable of doing? How can I keep progressing myself? And also with the same with your people, just because other people have, if I was to compare my team now with your team, Bill, who are quite tenured, that'd be really unfair to do, right? Because
correct.
I'm looking at people who are like absolute legends in the business. They've been around for a long time. They've obviously got a different kind of day-to-day routine as well, all that kind of stuff, right? And so I kind of go to my people and goes, hey, be more like Bill's team. Like it won't work because they're different people. And so I can't even, we're not even in the same playground. And so it's really important that you look at just your team, understand your team, your own rhythm of working and what works best for you in the long run as well.
Yeah. And I think the last piece for that for me as well is, like you mentioned, that other leaders sometimes, like, they seem like they have it all together. Understand that you are that person in some ways for other people probably too. There are definitely things that I am really good at and like phenomenal at, but there is definitely a bunch of the role that's not my strength and not my forte. And it's the same for every single leader. And I think it's really important to be open to being reflective of that as well. And then just being like, oh, there's a few gaps here, a few gaps there. What can I work on? What can I do to improve myself for my people? And I think that should always be the focus, like your self-improvement. Like for your own career progression, the biggest thing you can ever do is develop your people and learn more ways to develop your people and get better at doing that. Because I think if you were looking to really progress your career, the leader that I want as a senior leader is someone who develops me, because if they develop me, I'll develop 10 people. It becomes that trickle-down effect of development. And I think there's no skill greater. I will say this, sorry to cut you off. I think it's about the first like 10, 15 minutes, dumping on the book, right? And then there's obviously a lot of very good points and a lot of very good takeaways from the book. Wish it was 2 chapters long. I feel like you take there's been so many, like a couple of really good points and they're all interconnected. Just don't know if it was, I feel like you could strip half of this out and it would be phenomenal.
I think if they strip 90% of the Apple examples out, you probably end up with a book that's, 241 pages? We probably could have done it. We probably could have done it in 50.
50.
Like it's.
Yeah. Here's an example, or he's also an Apple example. Maybe if we just take out all and he's also an Apple example, we'd be like 2/3 the size of the book.
Do you reckon Simon's done the old uni/high school trick, right? Where the publisher's gone, he's probably written down his ideas, but it's only 50 pages long. And he's, oh crap, okay, let's pad this out with
double
just
spacing,
repetition and Apple stuff. Let's just do that. Oh, geez. And he's probably only done research on Apple, so he couldn't be bothered doing more research on anyone else. And he's, you know what? I know a hell of a lot about Apple. Let's just keep going. People love Apple. Surely they'll be okay with it. 241 pages later, I've only mentioned Apple every page. The other part about developing your people, I think, as well, and growing your capability, to segue really quickly, is that developing upwards, right? The other saying that really stood out to me here is the monkeys in the tree stuff.
Oh,
and I think we both got a kick out of that.
I did like that one.
We both got a great kick out of it, which is your if your monkey's all in a tree, right? And if say the monkeys are leadership and the monkeys above you are senior leaders, right? And you look up at your senior leaders, all are asses, even though they've got smiles on their faces, right? Like they might be smiling and looking out and they think, okay, everything's going well. They think they're doing a great job, but everyone underneath them is only looking at their ass. So they only see that part of them. So they make that assumption.
Perfect. And the leader looks down and sees only smiles. So the leader's looking down, seeing all these happy faces, like, oh, everything's great. And everyone else is looking up, just seeing a bunch of asses being like, this shit.
Yeah, correct. This is terrible. And so it is really important. And the kind of lesson I got out of that as a frontline leader is obviously the managing up. We always talk about this managing up and letting them know that it's not always smiles. And to our previous point around, if you're struggling with things or things are not going to plan, right? It's about also letting your leader know that, hey, there's probably some things we need to improve on in the business. I'm staying back every day. I'm not getting all my work done. All that kind of stuff. I think a good company should support you through those things and have those conversations with you and help you manage. The other thing as well is one thing that I think Bill's spoken about in previous episodes as well is invite your senior leader to your huddles. I think that's a great one as well.
Yeah, I think it's something that's like really underutilized. I think getting people to come and look at your sessions, like to calibrate. And I think I say this all the time, like how do you know how your people are doing in their role? You do observations, you sit in and you watch a lot of it. And I think it's just as important for the leaders to do that to us as well. And I think it's really interesting that some people get really frightened at the idea of letting their senior leader come along into the session, letting their senior leader be a part of it because they don't want to be judged. But at the same time, if there's things that you're doing wrong, it's kind of stuff that you need to know and you need to be told how you could be doing this differently. I recently invited one of the senior leaders in our workplace to come along to one of the huddles that I was running. It was around a change that she was a big part of and wanted to roll out. And I presented it and I feel like I did a great job. But then afterwards, she was like, I did a really good job. What do you think you could do differently if you can do it again? Hit me with my own language, which I loved. Instantly, I was like, you're on it. You're coaching me to the max. Real recognizes real, game recognizes game. And I recognize when I'm getting coached well. And in the end, we ended up having a bit of a conversation. She led me down the path, did a great job to what I could have done differently, which was I didn't actually have any form of like presentation. So the people that also like something a bit visual kind of missed out on that aspect. And I was like, you're damn right. You're damn right. And I think that's something that now the last couple of times I've had to present, I've made sure I've had something there. And it's something that's been such a big impact to me. And I think people rob themselves of that. Like your senior leader should know. And I think your senior leader should want to. I don't know about you. I've had a senior leader sitting with me, I think once in the last 6 years. Well, across the various workplaces I've been to. It's not something that happens enough. And I think there's so much value there.
Yeah. And I think people get quite intimidated by senior leadership. You're right, Bill.
Funny people.
Especially my team. I know they've spoken about some of our senior leadership and go, oh, geez, what if I want to go approach that person? And the conversation I was having, they're human. If you've got a suggestion, you want to have a conversation with them, go. Just have a conversation. But I think it's easy for us to say because we deal with them on a regular basis for some of these people. So I think if you take away some of that fear factor as well, you create a more open culture across the board as well. And also, sometimes they might say things to your senior leader that they think you can do better than that kind of stuff because they might feel more comfortable doing that or whatever the case is, right? It just creates that feedback loop across the board. I think if you're a senior leader out there listening to this, I think go sit down with people that are a couple levels down from where you are because you might get the insights you need. And you're trusting your middle management or kind of lower middle management to always tell you the truth and tell you how it is. Sometimes that might not be the case, right? Like it's not even a trust factor sometimes, it's just perception. And if you go sit down with someone in Frontline, they might represent that in a better way that you can understand, you can enact some change. It's going to be better for your business in the long run as well.
You're absolutely bang on. I just think it's such an odd thing to me that more senior leaders don't want to do it and more people don't want the leader to come. What do you gain? Because also from like a career development thing, if you do a good job, they'll know that you're excellent at your job, which helps. But then two, if there's things that you miss, they will tell you what they want to see from you as a leader. And I think that we've spoken about the 4 streams of expectations a bunch of times, but like that stream is the one that people neglect the most, I think sometimes, is just going and finding out exactly this is what I'm currently doing. What do you want me to do? Jules, is there anything else? Or do you reckon we're about done for today?
I think we've started and finished it really well. We go. So
should you start with why Yes. Should you buy and read this book? Probably no. I think you can probably not even just watch this podcast. Go and listen to a bunch of his like talks and stuff like that. Watch the TED talk. You can definitely find the information. Like, admittedly, it'd still be like a fake time commitment, but I think it'll be more palatable and more interesting doing it that way than sitting down and reading about Apple for 2 hours. Like, just read Steve Jobs biography at this point. Otherwise, if there's nothing else, Jules, I reckon it's about time we wrap up. Thank you for listening today. If you did enjoy today's episode, please let us know. If you've got another book that you'd like Jules and I to read, give our thoughts on, hopefully we'll enjoy it a little bit more than this one. Please, again, comment, absolutely. And otherwise, subscribe, all that good stuff. It helps us out an absolute ton. But yeah, thanks for having us.
Just remember, when it comes to Simon Sinek, start with his videos.